Speaking of greatness, Spencer Jergins.
Ben.
I'm so glad to be, first of all, super excited to finally be actually meeting you in person. The fact that we have an opportunity to record a podcast, work together for a few days. Just so you know some background. So it's kind of cool. I think it's crazy when you kind of get the benefit of hindsight and you like look at how people come into your life. I don't know if I've even told you this story, but I'm going to tell you it. So my mom for a long time worked for a mobile IV business in Salt Lake City. And she worked with them for a long time. She introduced me to their owner. I worked for a different corporate agency at the time, and we had a few meetings, but it didn't really end up going anywhere very far. Then I started Ascent Digital, and she no longer worked for that mobile IV company anymore, but the owner called me and was like, hey man, I need to kind of double down on my marketing, see how it goes. Anyway, I ended up doing some marketing with them. They went to this conference in Florida where John was at in Florida. And then, they referred John to me, and then through John, I got to meet you. And it's wild to see, we always have these different connections with people in our lives or how people come in, but it's pretty rare when we get to linearly see. And I called my mom a while back and I was like, had you not done that job, I wouldn't know Spencer and all of the impact that you've made on me with the businesses that you've sent my way in Austin and stuff like that. I just want you to know, it's like, you're one of the guys in my life, even though today's the first day we've met in person, that you've had a huge impact on me. And it's been really cool because I've gotten the benefit of being able to trace back how you were introduced into my life, which has just been neat. So anyway, I wanted to start with that I'm thrilled to be sitting in the same room with you.
Well, it's my pleasure, buddy. And here we are on camera in the hotel room. You're in my world now. You're in my domain. New Braunfels, Texas. I bet you got here and you're like, where the hell are we?
Yeah, I called you. I was like, I'm on I-35 traffic. It's going to be crazy.
No, seriously, Ben, it's so fun to meet you in person, finally be here. We're going to have a great trip. We're going to get a lot done. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I always say one thing leads to another. One thing always leads to another. So it's really cool to see just all the people that you've helped that I've sent your way. I mean, you've helped me tremendously in both of my businesses, but because you've given me that confidence and be like, hey, this guy's really legit. He's really good at what he does. I exude that when I'm talking to people and I'm getting excited about your services when I'm telling them about what you do. It's a no-brainer. It's so easy to send people your way because I know they're going to be satisfied. I know they're going to be happy with the work they get from you. And I'm your biggest advocate, man. I'm your biggest advocate. I'm always going to bat for you and trying to send as many people your way as possible. And it's important. It's important if you're starting a business to really lean into the marketing and the branding and think about that strategy. And if you're not doing that, you're really missing the boat. And so, having someone like you on the team is crucial. You're a crucial component of any successful business. So
you're just being nice because we're filming.
No, I'm serious. I mean, I've told you many times, and I'll keep telling it to you. It's really wonderful hearing the feedback from the people that I've sent to you. Hey, thank you so much for sending Ben towards us. He's made a huge difference. And I can say and I think I've told you before. I probably went through I've worked with maybe 5 different marketing companies. In my past through one way or another. And I was about ready to give up on thinking that there just are not any good marketers out there. These guys don't know what they're doing. They don't get results. And I'm over here trying to work it out month to month, trying to make these adjustments and trying to dial it in. It's just not happening. And then right away, once we just sometimes you just know your kindred spirits, you get going with somebody. You're like, all right, I got great vibes. That's number 1. Number 2, I like what they're talking about. Let's see where it goes. Screw it. You gotta kind of let go and give it a go. But I'm so glad I did because it's worked out.
I'm glad too. And it's been cool. It's really fun when, that saying of that a client will become a friend way sooner than a friend will become a client. I remember clearly, I'll be curious to see if you even remember this meeting or not, but you and I were on one of our monthly strategy session meetings. And for whatever reason, we were both kind of like, dude, this is hard. Like we were kind of having one of those, like, running a business is tough. And I'll never forget, you were telling me, somehow we got on the topic of hot tubs and cold plunges, and really self-care is kind of, how the conversation evolved, which was cool on a few levels for me. One was, it was really neat that I felt comfortable, with an A client of mine to be like, I'm struggling. Like we're, business ownership is brutal, and and then you're like, yeah, I feel it too. But then it was really cool that you said something that I'll never forget in that meeting. And it was pretty much the gist of that: if I don't take care of myself, I won't be able to take care of my business. I'll never forget that, because it stood out to me in such a real way. And I'd love to kind of hear, because I know, so just for the audience to be aware too, Spencer is the owner of not one, but two successful businesses at the moment. And who knows what the future will hold, or, and a resume that goes along with those two as well.
We're scheming all the time. We're always looking for the next one, the next opportunity.
So how do you, tell me a little more about that? Like, how do you take care of yourself so that you can stay highly functioning to maintain, you're a father, you're taking care of yourself, you're running two businesses. I'd love to kind of hear like the day-to-day prioritizing and how do you juggle it all?
Not very well.
Come on, no. This is where we fake it. We act like we have
No. This is raw. This is real. We're not BSing here. No. To be honest, I've had real ups and downs with my health, physically. And mentally. And, we'll get into it a little bit more as the show goes on, I'm sure, but I did get the chance to listen to your previous podcast, and there's definitely a theme of mental health in there and taking care of your body and the things that you do to do that, but more importantly, your mental health. And I've had my battles with mental health. I've had my battles with physical health. I was, an athlete my whole life, played every sport growing up, ended up doing well and going and playing college football on scholarship, and I ended up breaking my back, and unbeknownst to me, lived that way for years and endured many unsuccessful surgeries that did not help the situation. And so, 6.5 years later, I'm finally getting the correct diagnosis. I'm in 2-level fusion, L3, L4, L5, spinal fusion. And, during those 6.5 years, from my probably the age of, I would say, my early 20s up until 26, 27, that was just a brutal time. Physically, just being in that amount of pain every single day and not knowing why, knowing that my back was messed up, and, I've had other issues, injuries, surgeries, I think up to 9 of them now. And most of that from sports and playing football. But when you ask, like, how do I take care of myself? Well, it's kind of up and down. I'm still figuring that out. I can tell you what helps and what works for me, and what doesn't and why. But really, you look at me today, you probably think, oh, he's pretty tall, pretty fit. Dude, I'm pushing 275 right now. I'm 6'4", 275, and I don't look like I weigh that much, but I have a good frame and I carry it well. But I'd like to be 50 pounds less. So I still have a journey to go on to, be healthier, to be more fit, to lose the weight. It's just gotten a lot harder to lose the weight as you get older. When I was younger, I think I used to put on weight and take off weight very quickly, depending on what the sport was. If I was getting ready for basketball, I'd take 30, 40 pounds off. For basketball season. For football, I'd bulk back up. So really, man, has the back injury been the major contributing factor to that side of it in terms of the weight, and like I would imagine that it limits exercise availability? Yeah. When you are just used to being an athlete and you train a certain way, you play sports a certain way, you move your body in a certain way your whole life, and then all of a sudden your body can't do that anymore. That's a really tough adjustment to say, okay, how do I now exercise, or how do I now, go burn calories? Well, the way I used to do it was through training and playing sports and doing the things that I love to do. That as a byproduct of that, I was getting exercise. Well, now I can't do that anymore in a lot of different things, in a lot of different disciplines that I would love to do. But So I've had to tweak and adjust that. And that's still, a learning process. And, for me personally, I kind of ebb and flow. I will put on the weight, and then I'll get to a point where I'm like, wake up one day and like the snap of a finger, I'm just ready to change. And I'll lose 30, 40, 50 pounds pretty quick. So, and then I get there and I'll probably be a little bit complacent, and then I'll probably put it back on. and so it's a bit up and down. I'm searching for that consistency. I will say that the some of the stress and challenges of starting two businesses at the same time and running and trying to scale those has contributed to me maybe having some more unhealthy habits around sleep and around diet. But there's really not an excuse at the end of the day. You either do what you need to do or you don't. And, there's no one else to blame. So I think that more importantly than like how I look or how I feel, I know I need to lose weight. Like I know I need to be healthier. The routine of, the hot tub and the ice baths really help a lot. The ice baths help my inflammation, which I have a lot of naturally. And it really helps my mental health. It really helps kind of reset me, get me ready for whatever I'm about to do. The hot tub is great, and so those two things help me the most.
Did you start especially with the cold plunge, did you start that for physical benefits or mental benefits? Like what initially triggered you to purchase? Which, by the way, and because we're like a huge podcast with a ton of followers, so Morosco Forge, I'm sure at some point will sponsor us. But I've looked into those, and those are not cheap. So I'm just curious, what was the driving factor to invest? Obviously, it's a sizable investment. Was physical the leading factor or mental?
So I used to always take ice baths after football practice or after games. So I was already accustomed to taking ice baths. I knew how good they were to help you bounce back, to help with inflammation, and just how refreshed it made you feel, and how it just seemed to help the mental acuity side of things as well. So I've always loved, and I'm just a big guy with a lot of insulation, so I can handle the cold well. So I always feel good in the cold. It's like my body's cooling down. My body temp is lowering, and I feel better. So it's funny that we're on this topic of ice baths because there's my friends really like to tease me and joke with me about it because how many people are on social media and doing all these ice bath videos like, I wake up every day, ice bath for 30 minutes, and then this and this, talk about their routines. But I'm not that guy. I promise. I don't really tell everyone I do the ice bath.
You're not even on social media at all, are you?
No, I'm not right now. No. But to answer your question, funny story on Morosco Forge and ice baths. So, about 3-4 years ago, I bought this thing. They were a relatively new company, and I had just got done listening to a Rogan show. I don't know which one it was, but someone came on and was like, ice baths. Well, before that, I had been doing like water troughs and ice, and it's just not sustainable. Like it is so tedious to pre-plan your ice baths and put ice in there, and it's just expensive too, all the ice and the time and everything. So I'm like, I need just something I can have no excuse and just go ahead, and it's right there, you better use it. So someone came on and said Morosco Forge on the Rogan show, and I knew instantly if there was ever a time that I was gonna buy the thing, I needed to do it right because the price was about to go insane. So if you look at the prices on those things now, I'll just tell you that I probably got mine for a fourth of what it costs now, because they were a new company. The model I have is like archaic compared to the new ones that they're putting out now. But I'm so happy I pulled the trigger then because it's still working great. No problems with it. It's a great company. It's a great, I think I have the Morosco Forge. It's like a big trough built in around a wood thing. And I got it big enough and wide enough for me to fit in, which is nice. But it's been a game changer, but I got it at a fraction of the price they are now. So I got lucky. I knew if I didn't pull the trigger then that the prices were going to go insane because, Joe Rogan just said, hey, this is the company I'm using now. This is what I got. And I was like, oh God, okay, I'm pulling the trigger.
We need to get Outdoor Originals on the Joe Rogan show.
Well, we almost had Ivy Bird on the Rogan show. So John, who just gave you an IV bag, did jelly rolls.
I remember that.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna shout you out on the show. No doubt." And then they got on the topic, and I was like, "Oh, here we go. It's gonna happen." And he said, "Yeah, I just got 2 of them, this, that, and the other." And he didn't shout us out. And I'm like, "Bro, come on, man, come on." And so oh well, we got a story to tell, but
a social post with John and Jelly Roll, which was cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool.
How come you're not on social media?
Doom scrolling. How the algorithm just has you, and it's so easy to just start scrolling through and looking at all the stuff, and I found myself just grabbing for my phone subconsciously. Like, I just put my phone down like 20 seconds ago, and I just grabbed it and opened up the app again. That's a problem. So removing myself from the situation, removing the temptation, deleting the app from my phone is the only thing that I could do to kind of rein my focus in. You have priorities in life, and this thing is not serving me outside of just pure entertainment and exhausting my dopamine receptors probably.
Yeah.
So I just said, well, I don't really need this. I'd like to have a business presence on social media, and we can do all of our things with advertisement on that platform, but my wife runs the social media page. She has her page. She's great about, posting updates and stuff with the kids. So anyone that is a family member or needs to follow the Jergins family can just follow my wife and have a good idea of what's going on.
Because did you feel like there was a risk of it distracting you from bigger goals, or that it was distracting you from present? Like, what do you think was the biggest negative impact, from that idea of doom scrolling that you identified, and then obviously was significant enough for you to say, I'm going to get this off my phone?
Well, honestly, you just know when something's not serving you. And if you know what your goals are and what your priorities are, and you typically will try to align things in your life to meet those goals and priorities, and the social media has just never been one of those things for me. I'm very happy with my circle of friends, my family. I feel more rooted than I've ever felt in my life right now with my faith, my family, the friends that I have that I consider great friends. It's a very close circle, very small circle. Beyond all those things, I don't feel like I need much else.
Yeah.
I feel like I have enough. And so I don't get a lot from it. I will say I love YouTube. I love all things YouTube. I will get on YouTube and I will search, many different topics or whatever my fancy is, and go down rabbit holes and wormholes on YouTube. But I have to kind of cap it out. I kind of have to cap that time, or else I'll spend too much time on it and not enough time doing the things that are going to help me, achieve my goals.
So I'm curious, and just a quick kind of anecdote or aside. You mentioned about how, I forget your exact words, but that you're satisfied with where you're at from a social perspective with your friends and, your family and your kids and things like that. One of the coolest things I got to see kind of vicariously, you connected me with Honeycomb, who I believe is your across the street neighbor. And I was having a video call with him in his garage, and showing me your place across the street. And then I know that I think Jake lives right down the road or whatever. And it was kind of fun because I got to see this, like, I felt like I got to kind of have an outsider's perspective into this cool literal community that you guys have built, physically, with this amazing network of friends and families that all live within the same street. And I've seen your kids, on our morning calls or whatever, sitting at the table eating their cereal before school and all that. And I think it's amazing. I think it's cool to hear that you realize that, like, you're satisfied in those elements of your life and not necessarily need to seek more, I'll call it validation through social media or whatever. But what I'm curious about is, at the same note, I know you well enough to know you're also very driven. What's the difference between, like, chasing these pursuits? Because, you and I have calls all the time, and you're a visionary. You're very much like, I got to scale my businesses. I got to find these efficiencies. You're incredibly insightful in those aspects. So I would love to just kind of hear your perspective, because and to frame it up a little bit better, it's something I struggle with, is like having gratitude for what I have while also staying hungry for more. And I would just love to hear your perspective on, because I just now heard you say, how satisfied you are with all these components of your life, but I've also seen this incredible hunger and drive from you. And I'd love to just kind of hear the balance and the relationship between the two.
I think you have to have, I think you have to be rooted. I think you have to have the satisfaction in your personal life and your own sphere of influence, whether that's your family, your faith, your friends, whatever that nucleus is. I think you have to be very content with that situation, or really strive to, in order to have the hunger to do your pursuits and go after the business. So for me, it's about like, I can't have the vigor and the visionary and be a visionary. I don't have the hunger to grow and scale my business unless everything else that's the most important thing in my life is rooted, is grounded, is taken care of. So it's more of kind of like, keeping the house clean. The house is the nucleus, which is your core beliefs, your core values, your family, those things, So I think for me, I have just such an incredible family. I have an incredible wife, incredible children, incredible friends, and I get the opportunity to meet really amazing people from all different walks of life frequently, and it's inspiring. But if I'm not satisfied and happy with the things that are important in my life, then I don't feel like that's the balance I need. I don't have what I need to then go on. So if they will be at war with each other. If you're trying to scale your business and really grind and grow your business, but your house isn't tidy, well, then they're going to be conflicting. There's going to be push and pull there. So I think before you can even begin to pursue your goals and dreams in business, you have to really work on yourself and work on that dynamic and clean that up and be in a good place where you've done a lot of work to yourself internally, very introspective. Be real honest with yourself about what you're good at, what you're not, what you're struggling with, what you need to work on. And if you can do that and be rooted and grounded to something bigger than yourself, I think it just clears the space and clears the path for you to be able to go and do those things.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's about without those things, if I'm not focused on the things that are most important, I can't go after the things I want to go after in business.
I love that perspective, because, the easier answer would have been like, I'm grinding so I can take care of my family. And I like that reframe of, it's almost kind of like that hierarchy of needs, that people talk about, usually it's in the context of like food, shelter, warmth, and whatever. But I love that idea of like, I got to make sure my family's squared away. My house is tidy, and now I can pivot and chase my dreams, or pivot and like hit the gas. I've actually seen that in a lot of ways with Ascent Digital. Like, the fact that we're having a podcast even right now, it's almost like I got to the point finally where I'm like, okay, cool. I haven't taken my foot off the gas, but it's good enough that I can now pursue, I don't want to say other things because they're very much related, but like starting to build the personal brand or have these conversations. So I really relate to that of like, and I love the way you've reframed that of like, that stuff is solid, and then I can pursue these other things. It's an interesting way to look at it, because most people, I feel like, move forward with sort of chip on their shoulder motivation. It almost feels to me like you move forward with like gratitude motivation, which I just think is fascinating.
I used to move forward with the chip on the shoulder type of way, and that didn't serve me and didn't work for me well. I think having gratitude is the way to go. And I think it was your last podcast. It might've been Kyle. But I think there was a moment in there where he said, yes, it's okay to pursue my business and to be ambitious, but also not neglect my family and my children and be intentional with them in that time, and okay to turn off business and get rooted and grounded again in what's in front of you right now. You have kids. I have a 10-year-old daughter, Sophia, 7-year-old son, Geronimo. They're growing up so fast, and if you don't stop and pause and take the time, which it does take time, you are investing your time in these children. The excuse of, oh, I'm grinding to give them a better life. Well, they're going to not like you for it later on when you just miss their entire childhood and we're always working or too busy to stop what you're doing to, pay attention to what they have to say. And so I think my wife and I do a good job of trying to slow things down at the end of the day and talk to our kids and be very involved in what's going on in their life and, make sure we see those subtle signs of maturity as they happen and so that we can do our job to guide them as well as we can. So if you don't, and that's kind of getting back to the theme of like, well, you kind of work on your nucleus and be grounded and work on your family. Like if you're not doing those things, then you're going to be so conflicted going forward in business. So
does your wife work?
No.
So
No.
you're the sole income provider for your whole family?
Yes.
How do you balance that? Like, because to me, there's some conflicting realities there of, because in a lot of ways, if the business isn't successful, you've then sort of failed as a father. But if you spend too much time with the businesses, you failed as a father in another way. How do you balance it? How do you and especially a guy like you with multiple businesses and incredibly different businesses, with wearing all these different hats. And I know sometimes you're literally out doing the work at Outdoor Originals. I've seen you, in a sweaty shirt and things like that. Where does that line of because in a lot of ways, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs justify dedicating the entirety of their existence to their businesses by saying that it's for their family, and when in a lot of ways you still do, especially you're it, in terms of income for the family. I'm just kind of curious how do you balance or know, okay, now is time to maybe I need to be there in an emotional way, not a financial way, or I need to be there in a fatherhood role that's different than just a provider. How do you balance those?
I don't think it's really that difficult. I don't really think I think we make it more challenging than it has to be a lot of times. I think because my wife doesn't work, we have an incredible family dynamic where I know my kids are taken care of, are looked after, have what they need. That frees me up tremendously to have more vigor at work, to go and make more money. If she were to go get a job and do something, if the stress and strain that puts on our family dynamic of having to then split the time with all of the kids' activities, with all the sports and activities they do, with all the responsibilities that come along with trying to give them a lot of opportunities to experience new things. It would diminish my ability to make more money, and it would make her more stressed out and feel like she's not being as intentional in helping raise our children the way we want to see them raised. So, I think it's wonderful when you can have, two incomes in the house. That's fantastic, and figure it out and make that work. Just for us, it wasn't our path, and everyone's path is different and everyone has different circumstances, and it's not right or wrong. And that's just what works for us. But as far as, balancing everything out, starting the businesses, deciding I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I felt like I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, but I never really had started, any businesses on my own. So I was already kind of doing the job in my head for so long before I actually did. But that's honestly given me more flexibility and freedom, because when you're the owner, it kind of falls on your shoulders at the end of the day. The business goes as you go. So, you work that around your life. And so I've worked that around my life, I think, to where, I can be there on the weekends for my kids' games or for that, cheer tournament that's going on. I never have to miss those things because I'm the owner of this business. And I'm going to delegate just enough to where I can get away with that. And I think that, in scaling any new business, being very strategic about how you delegate and how you bring people along and help help them, but also see the vision of where you're going and get people inspired really helps that. But for me, I think it's become easier because before, when I was working for someone else, and my background is commercial real estate and mortgage, You kind of have to show up at a certain time and you can't leave till a certain time. And there's you're just not as flexible. So my life has become more flexible and I'm more available. And, I have an incredible wife that's very supportive when I tell her, hey, hon, I really need to buckle down. And like I told her, this week I'm out of pocket Wednesday, Thursday, I'm with Ben all day. And we're doing what we're trying to do here. So, I'm out. And she's like, no problem, and so just having that freedom to go do that is huge. And I wouldn't have that if she worked.
Yeah.
And so there's already some built-in balance to this whole equation for me being able to own and operate a couple businesses. But, if anyone's listening and thinking about starting a small business, I would say that if I could go back and do it all over again, not that I regret anything or that I would change anything, but I would probably just start one business and I would just focus all my energy and efforts into that one business and see how far I could take that before trying to jump into another opportunity or start two simultaneously. But there's been so much learning and growth in that process that, at the end of the day, I just look at it like, the old me, in my early 20s, mid 20s, maybe would be overcome with anxiety and fear of failure and would not handle all the things that have happened to me in the past year very well. But now, because I've just arrived at this time in my life where I've had enough experience and enough opportunities, and I've done a thing or two, I just take the punches in stride so much better, and and I'm able to adjust on the fly. And I think, to be honest, like one of the biggest ways I feel like I can balance it all is I'm a Christian. I have my faith is in Jesus Christ. To be honest with you, God has never not provided for me in my whole entire life. So why would I doubt him now? Even when things are going really bad and it's like, I can't see through this mess or how I'm going to get out of it. It's like, you have to remain faithful. And when you do, things turn out really well and they eventually you'll work through them. And there's a lesson in everything. There's a lesson in the losses. There's a lesson in the failures. And I think I've just innately, whatever, have been blessed with the ability to just be a glass half full gratitude type person where, I realize just how lucky and fortunate I am to have what I have, to have the friends I do, to have the wife and children that I do, to have the opportunities that I'm afforded. So there's not a lot to complain about, even when things are tough, even when things are going bad. And, there's something you can learn. There's something, you've seen the ups and downs with my businesses. You hear about them monthly. You I share my numbers with you. You can get a good idea of what's going on. And, every time there's something, there's always an opportunity to learn from it. That's, you turn a negative into a positive. I think we're always just looking for what's the get rich scheme or that pill that's going to make me lose weight or whatever. There's just no easy, quick fixes to anything, and
I remember, sorry, finish your thought.
No, once you're okay with that, once you realize that, like I used to early on in business, used to be very focused on, trying to get there as fast as possible. And we were aggressive with marketing. We were trying to gain market share, penetrate a new market as the new kids on the block. And we did that successfully. But I'm always kind of, you move that goalpost and you're just like, oh, I got to hit those numbers now. Well, sometimes it's okay when you don't, because it's an opportunity to learn and grow. And it's okay if your time horizon changes. All of a sudden I used to think maybe I wanted to be here in 1 year. Well, I didn't hit that goal. Well, that's okay. I'm still around. I'm still kicking. I'm still here doing what I'm doing. So let's just wake up and put one more day in and then put another one in and stop thinking so far ahead all the time and just think of the things that you can do each day, big or small, one step at a time. And then, just let the chips fall where they do and then adjust on the fly. Be flexible. Like,
it's almost like the goal is to keep playing the game more so than to, win it. I remember another one of the conversations that you and I have had that, left an impact on me. And I don't know if you'll remember this one either or not, but I think we were actually FaceTiming or on the phone or something, but we were both kind of expressing this feeling of like, what are we missing? like, and then I think we kind of arrived at the conclusion that there isn't a shortcut. Like there isn't the formula and that guy's got it or this guy did it that way and that's the way that we should follow it. It was kind of this like, well, I guess we just keep going, type of thing. And even when we were off camera earlier, you and I were just talking about one of your businesses and really this idea of like, simply don't quit. And we'll get there. We just have to kind of slow grow it and keep grinding. I think it's interesting. It's really fascinating for me to hear. It's almost like the adversity that you've had in the last year, specifically through entrepreneurship. And then obviously, you throw in literally physical pain and, mental health things and whatever. But it's almost like it has presented this like confidence in you of like, I've been through worse. Today, this is just today's problem, or this is just the thing now, and I'll get through that again. It's cool to actually sit and see how casually you mention the ups and downs that you've experienced in the last year. And I love seeing that in you, that there's this new level of confidence of knowing that you've overcome a ton and you just keep on going and then it keeps on going. I'm kind of curious your thoughts on that, of like that idea of simply not stopping and how much you've overcome in the past, I call it 18 months, I guess, ish, with kind of the entrepreneurship endeavors, and how it's shifted your perspective on adversity in general.
So I'll get to that, but kind of backing up a little bit, you ever, when you struggle with anxiety, you ever get that horrible pit in your stomach when something goes wrong and it just snowballs from there and it derails you? A long time ago, when I was struggling with panic attacks and anxiety in my early mid-20s, it would, having that adversity, having that struggle could derail me. It could really put me off, and then it would lead to this, total non-production. It wouldn't serve me at all. Once I worked through that and learned how to, get beyond that and have been beyond that, I've realized that every time in business or every time in life that you're presented with those unique challenges and problems that can derail a business potentially, does that panic, does that anxiety, does that serve you? Does that actually help the problem? So I learned to just get to the problems a lot faster and get to the issues faster, and when they come up, and not get overwhelmed and overreactive when they come up. So I think one of the keys to kind of handling adversity is to, recognize it, acknowledge it, table it, give it a voice, give it eyes, give it a face, whatever, acknowledge it, and then sit with it for a little bit and just kind of try to think logically and think almost without emotion. What is the next step, rather than being overreactive or letting all your fight or flight kick in. And I don't do that perfectly all the time, but I do it so much better than I used to. So handling adversity now and handling the challenges of the business, like, as long as your conviction is there, your faith in the business is there, your process is good, your fundamentals are sound, you're investing money wisely, you're putting the customer first, you're doing all the right things, and the results aren't there. You just have to have faith that if you keep doing those things, you're going to get breaks. Good things are coming. But don't quit. Just stay alive long enough. Don't quit. Just keep surviving. And I think you brought up a stat the other day, something like what percentage of businesses fail their first year versus third year? What are those numbers?
90%. First 3 years.
Okay. And so, I'm like, hey, I'm halfway. I'm halfway there. We're doing well. Things are getting better.
And that's not to mention profitability.
Right.
The businesses that are profitable year one is like, a fraction of a percentage.
Right. So, and when you kind of zoom out and you look at it and say like, actually, I'm bucking all the trends. I'm beating those statistics, it's not that bad. We just got to hang in there and keep going. So I don't know how really to answer your question other than to say, for me, the best way to handle, adversity is to one, always just look at it through the lens of there's an opportunity to learn from said adversity. So many times in contracting, general contracting with Outdoor Originals, there's always problems that come up. There's always a problem and issue with the job or a potential problem with the customer, and those are so illuminating. There's such a lesson in the problems. You have to just be willing to, instead of throwing your hands up and woe is me and oh, here we go again and all that. It's like, okay, well, what happened? Why did it happen? And what are we going to do next time to make sure it doesn't happen? Like, we make it more hard than it has to be. We just kind of have to, get over yourself. Get over yourself, get to the problem faster, and just start addressing it logically and stop freaking out so much that things aren't going your way right now, because they're going to turn. If you start putting out there good vibes, good energy, and keep focused on the goal, it's going to turn in your favor. But it's not going to turn in your favor if you're always floundering and blaming everyone else and not taking any accountability and responsibility for your role in that problem, because we all play a role in every problem that comes our way, whether we like to admit that or not. So learn from that, adjust on the fly, and try not to make the mistake again going forward.
It's almost like the difference between reacting and responding. So I'm about halfway through David Goggins' second book, Never Finished. And I was actually on the plane here today, reading through, and the chapter was basically talking about how most of the time when people quit, they react rather than respond, meaning they are driving on emotion. Things get hard, something difficult happens, and they react to the problem and end up, quitting or thinking that they're imposters or they're never cut out for this or whatever, instead of responding to the problem.
I see it every day.
More
I see it every day.
I think it's fascinating because you mentioned a little bit about, and I'd love to hear more about that if you're comfortable with it, of, kind of your past struggles with anxiety. And I didn't know panic attacks as well. I personally struggle with anxiety a fair amount. Coming from that background and then having this like grounded perspective on adversity and that idea between reacting versus responding is very fascinating to me, because by nature, those feelings of anxiety or the panic attack especially, that is 100% a reaction-based, for sure. Chemically, emotionally charged thing. I'd love to hear, if you're comfortable with it, a little bit of your background on, the panic attacks and anxiety. Ultimately, what I want to get to is kind of your progression to the stoicism that I see sitting next to me today.
Yeah, I think a lot of first of all, I wouldn't have it today. I wouldn't have that outlook and this, I wouldn't be so comfortable in my own skin today if I didn't have those experiences. So a lot of it is, when you're going through the bad experiences, is having the faith that I'm going through these things for a reason. I'm being tested. I'm learning. There's an opportunity to grow. So I think looking back, I wouldn't have the ability to not react had I not spent a lot of my life reacting. So, that's what's enabled me to know what works and what doesn't work. It's all experience. We can all talk about things ad nauseum, but until you do things, that's where all the learning is. You can talk about starting a business. Oh, this is the greatest business in the world, easiest business, super profitable. Well, until you do it, you don't know. And that's where you're going to gain all your valuable experiences in the doing. So I think going through those experiences is what has gotten me to a place where I know not how to react. And I think that looking back at, as far as like all the panic attacks and anxiety, I think a lot of that was just derived from me having no control, like a real lack of control in my life. And a lot of it was just being in really an excruciating amount of pain on a daily basis. Physical pain. And when you have physical pain 24/7 that's unrelenting, it does weird things to your head and to your psyche. And it really just grinds you into a pulp mentally and emotionally. And eventually you crack. So I wasn't dealing with the pain very well, but I had been it broke me down over the course of 6.5 years. So that was, a long time to deal with pain. So I'm not surprised that I developed anxiety and panic attacks, because there was just never a break from it. Never. And I still have pain on a daily basis now. And that hasn't changed, but it's not near as bad as it was. But, I think you have to go through those things. I think you have to learn through those negative experiences, through those tough times, and then you grow from them. And that's life. we all are going through this crazy thing called life, and we're learning and growing and having hardships, and everyone has their stuff. Everyone has their problems and challenges. And, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what led to all those things. But I will say, I think getting through it was huge. And it was almost, I don't even think there was it's hard to pinpoint a moment where I just learned how to not react anymore and not have those issues. But gosh, it's been, maybe 6 years, 7 years since I had a panic attack or felt completely overcome with anxiety.
Because you felt like you learned how to, you learned coping mechanisms or triggers. What was what's been the progression in those last few years?
It's hard to really pinpoint it. There's definitely, some coping mechanisms and getting grounded and getting grounded in your environment. Understanding what triggers and things might trigger you, but it's I wish I had a clear cut, this is what you do to overcome. It's different for everybody. It's so different. I know one of my sisters has struggled with it her whole life, and I think she's really started to come out of it as well in a beautiful way. And it's great to see that type of progress. And for me, I'll be honest, I think right towards the end, right before my fusion surgery, when I was at my lowest, when I was just at rock bottom, just a mess, and I could not take the pain anymore. I was broken in spirit, broken in body. I was kind of, searching really, really deep at that point in time. And I said, I got on my knees in my closet, and I just cried out for help to God. I just prayed just for help, for guidance, for relief, and said, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I can't carry this burden on my shoulders anymore. I've been trying to be Superman. I've been trying to, do it all on my own. I've been trying to burden everything that life throws at me on my own two shoulders. And, I failed to acknowledge and realize that someone else has already carried that burden for me and is there to help me lighten that load. And, it was immediately after that, the Holy Spirit just went to work in my life and just gave me great relief. Mm-hmm. And everything went fine with my surgery. Spiritually, I started to become more healthy. And prayer is so powerful. I will say, whether you're a Christian, whether you're Jew, Buddhist, Muslim, whatever, if you pray, prayer is very powerful. And I think when you start really praying about things that you're struggling with, and I think that can be really, really helpful. Or praying about things you're helpful with, whatever. Prayer's real, and prayer is very powerful. And I think, that really helped me get through it. And then also just maybe having gone through it enough, your body and your mind, you kind of know hey, this isn't, if you want to go down that road of where it goes with the panic attack or with anxiety, that's not going to a good place. You've been down this road many times. When are you going to grow from this? When are you going to learn that this isn't, what's happening? I think it helps to have wonderful people in your life around you, a great support system, actively trying to figure out the problem, actively trying to develop coping mechanisms. I think a lot of people that feel really helpless and hopeless in the situations of panic and anxiety, and they stop searching for those solutions and those things that they can do to make the problem better. And for me, I just never stopped searching. I never stopped trying to improve, to heal, to grow beyond that, and to get to a point where it doesn't affect me anymore. And I have to thank God for that. And I asked for it in prayer, and He gave it to me. I have to thank my environment, my family, my friends, my support system, and just continuing to do the work. The things what is the next thing I can do to make the situation better, and just never quitting at that. And I don't know, I just kind of grew out of it, man. I grew out of it, and it hasn't been a problem in my life for years. And even in very stressful situations, I find myself just a tinge of that fight or flight. And it's almost like I have this mechanism of nope, we're not going down that road. And it switches on. I've broken both ankles and rolled them many times in sports and different things. But now, like when you step in a pothole or something and your ankle goes to roll, it's like my body recognizes that so fast that my whole body drops and doesn't allow me to sprain my ankle. It's like this built-in response to what's coming that protects you. So something inside of me has developed over time through a lot of trial and effort and many years, and that just recognizes it right away and says, "No, we're good. We're good. We can go right around this, and we can keep moving forward, and we know what this is." So I wish I could be more insightful on this topic. I wish I could, say exactly what the game plan is, but I really think for everyone it's different. And I really think everyone's circumstances are different, but the hope and the biggest strategy, I think, is just to not quit and not stop trying to search for those solutions and those things that work for you and that get you out of that hole, whatever that is.
It's so fun to sit and hear, because we talk about business, we talk about life, we talk, whatever it might be. And I'm picking up on some very clear parallels, which I think is fascinating. And it's kind of like, obviously not quitting is a good one, especially on life, by the way. Anybody listening, don't quit on life. But it's interesting to hear. It's like one of the parallels that I'm picking up is through this adversity in life, you become stronger. And it's like, recognizing if you're going to roll your ankle and going, or recognizing that, there's a panic attack or anxiety coming and then dealing with it. Similarly, you talk about business and, overcoming a challenge. And then at the end of it, you end up with this, with Spencer Jergins, this incredibly high performing, grounded, well-centered human being. But what I'm loving hearing is that you turned into this, if that makes sense. Like, you didn't just like come out and just have it all figured out and crush it. And I think it's really neat to kind of hear the parallels behind life exploration and business exploration and how they kind of go hand in hand. And it's almost in a lot of ways like the life side of it prepared you for the business side of it. Would that be a safe assumption?
Yeah, there's so many parallels in both, and you go through the same things in business in a lot of ways that you go through in life. And yeah, if I had started businesses earlier on in my life, I would not be nearly as prepared to handle the ups and downs and challenges of those businesses. So I think that's a fair assessment for sure. And again, like without the experiences, without the doing, I think a lot of times people just have this analysis paralysis where they overthink things too much, or they have a vision or a dream or what they want to do, or they have to just overanalyze it to death before they get started. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to, jump right in and just kind of learn as you go and learn from it. And whether it works or not, it's okay. You're going to net out positive in the end of the day because you'll have gained so much more in the doing and than you would have sitting on the sidelines thinking about doing it and then never doing it.
Yeah.
So
so we're recording a podcast right now in my hotel room. And while we were setting it up, Quinn and I were laughing. And I was like, hey, man, it's easy to, easy to criticize the executor, but we're executing. And one of the things I tell this to people all the time, the difference between those that have done it and those that wish they had is those that have done it simply did it. Like there, it's. I wish there was more complexities or more, to unpack than that. But it literally is as simple as that. Like you simply do. You start doing it and chasing it. I remember when we were on a phone call a while back, we were kind of talking about business opportunities or whatever, and you had mentioned something, and I think it was where some of this confidence had kind of come through the phone of. Like it doesn't even matter the opportunity anymore, that you can make it work. And I'm kind of curious if do you feel like that applies to your life in general now too? That you look at all adversity with a different lens now and feel like you're capable of more than you realized you were, both in life and in business?
Well, I think we need to get one thing straight here. You're hyping me up like I've got it all figured out. Like I'm this like well put together finished product, man. I'm not. Not even close. Oh. I have so much to work on and get better at, and I'm still figuring it out and learning on a daily basis. So by no means should I be taken as any type of authority on any subject matter, because I'm not.
Well, but you're out here doing it.
But I'm trying. I'm doing, and I'm learning, and I can share what I've learned and what I think things, look like and act like, and what's worked for me and what hasn't. But it's funny, man. It's funny being on this podcast with you and hearing that. I feel like a total imposter sitting here. Like, no, man, I'm not the finished product. I've got so much that I can be doing better and I can learn and grow from. So, but again, it gets back to, for me, just know that I'm good. Like I'm good on the back end. So now whatever I go forward, and I'll put it to you like this. It's funny. I was just thinking about this on the way over here. I was like, here I am. I'm in 2 service-based businesses. I have a mobile IV business in Austin, and I have a outdoor construction business and landscaping business and design company in New Braunfels, in the greater area around New Braunfels, Texas. And how did I get here? How did I even fall into those opportunities? And how did that even happen? I don't even know. It just happened because I just got started. I saw an opportunity and I just started doing something. That's not even like my passion. I like wine. Like I want to figure out how do I grow grapes? How do I make wine? I like ranching. I love rotationally grazed cattle. Like I love what it does for the soil and the land. Like if you gave me all the money in the world, I'd be doing other things. But I've been really big on finding out, like, what is your gift? What are you good at? Like, what are your God-given innate abilities? And I think it's gonna sound corny, but I think I love watching and listening to like some motivational videos from time to time and inspirational speeches, and just when you need a little pick me up. And I think it was a Steve Harvey one talking about like, hey man, stop worrying about your passion and what it is you're about turning your passion into work, and focus on what you're good at. What are your God-given abilities? Like what are you naturally good at that you have to work the least at to be effective? And focus there. That's where you're going to make your money. And I think for me, like that's what makes it all okay at the end of the day, is knowing that I'm putting my God-given abilities to work in the manner that I know they're the most effective. And then I'm just surrounding myself with people that are very talented in the areas that I'm not. And you're one of those people. And I think if you can just hone in on, and I could be way off topic here. I don't know why. This is just what's on my heart right now. But hone in on your God-given abilities. What are you innately great at that requires the least amount of effort and energy? And just focus there. And then just surround yourself with people that fill the gaps for you. And you'll have great results.
How do you find that? And I'll frame it this way. I was actually just going to ask you, and I'm really glad that you just had the response that you had, because I was about to ask you that, it seems to me like you've intentionally taken some paths that to most people seem hard or risky, both in life and in business or whatever. I was going to say, why not just get a job, like whatever. But I love that idea of finding your God-given talents and the things that we're good at. I mean, to be totally candid, it's one of the things that I think has put me on an upward trajectory in a huge way in my life, is surrounding myself with people more talented than myself. I happen to have some strengths, but I have 1,000 weaknesses, and recognizing those and then, letting people help me with that area has been very difficult, but incredibly empowering and freeing once I let myself do it. But my question to you is how did you, and what advice would you give to somebody? Because somebody right now, I guarantee you, that old adage of most men live lives of quiet desperation.
For sure.
Somebody sitting in an office right now, not feeling fulfilled or feeling like they're not living up their potential. How do you find your God-given talent? Like, how did you find yours?
So I was in Telluride recently at a Bitcoin conference gathering. And I bought into Bitcoin at its peak. Okay, I FOMO'd into Bitcoin when it was top dollar, like north of $60,000. Okay, and I'm still in it though. We haven't sold, but so I'm not like a huge, that was it. Like I allocated a certain amount of money towards it. Like, hey, this is just going to invest into Bitcoin here, and if things happen, great. I'm not really too concerned with it anymore. But I happen to have a mutual friend who is very immersed in the Bitcoin culture and has a great network of people all over the country that have incredible podcasts and that work in the field and everything. And so I'm at this conference in Telluride, this gathering of these great Bitcoin minds and these people with these really successful podcasts, and it's so fun getting to be being an outlier, being someone that doesn't belong in the group, but being forced to have to kind of like, okay, let's see what's going on here and talk to everybody. And it was one of the themes that kept coming up was just that, like guys that just didn't know like what. I asked this question. I asked this question to a lot of the people there, men and women, and I was like, "What do you think you're most naturally gifted at? Like, what do you think your God-given abilities are? What do you think that you're so good at that you don't even have to think about or try very hard? It just comes natural to you?" And nobody could answer that question. But I think I planted a seed there. So I was like, "Hey, really, just think about it." For me, if you ask me that question, I think I've always been naturally gifted at being a conduit between people. And, you've seen it with how many people I've sent your way.
It's the best thing in my whole life.
And I'm a conduit. Okay. I like to connect people from point A to point B make the right connections. And so anytime you're starting a business, you have to make a lot of those connections between A and B, and you got to put the right people on the right things and put them with the right type of situation. And so like, a good quarterback in that way, if you will. And then, maybe the gift of gab a little bit, maybe naturally good at sales and marketing. I think that's just because it's 13 years of doing that stuff. You eventually kind of get better at it.
Guest.
I hope so. I hope I'm not just bombing your podcast for you here. That's pretty funny. It is, it's going to live in the internet ethos. My daughter's going to listen to this one day, and so I'm like, I kind of have to pick and choose what I put out there.
This is a safe space. Remember.
But no, I think there's no. You have to, first of all, you have to be introspective enough to be able to ask that question. Not people just in general are not very good at looking inward, at self-reflection, and I think. That's a problem. That's a problem for people. You have to be able to look inward and ask yourself, what is my character? Who am I? Like, what am I doing? What's important to me? If money were no issue, what would I be doing right now? Try to be intentional in that sort of way. And then you can start to figure out a little bit more about yourself. And I think when it comes to, what is your God-given ability? Well, look at your life and what's worked to this point. What have you been successful in? One of the reasons for your success is because you're incredibly endearing and you're someone who can just build rapport instantly with people. And so that's why you'd be a great podcaster and you're great at marketing, is because you build that trust and that friendship very fast. And that makes people feel comfortable and feel like they have a partner and someone in their foxhole that, hey, we're in this together. We're going to work through the problems. It's not going to be great at the start, but we're going to work through those and we're going to just continue to refine it and get better. So you're building trust. I think that's probably one of your God-given abilities, is the ability to build trust and make people feel comfortable and make people feel like they can open up to you and be honest. And so, that's probably served you really well. And that's just me making an assumption. But you could say that's one of your abilities, and that meshes really well in your career and what you do for work. So, people try to typically wear too many hats in their own business, and instead of trying to, figure out where their blind side is and what they're not good at, and stop trying to be good at that if you're not.
Yeah.
and recognize that you're not going to be good at that, because that's going to take away from what you already do really well. Lean into what you do really well, and that'll take you so much further. And then plug those pieces in where you can to get some help.
It's like that idea of, you've got to go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. It's been interesting. So, and I think, the caveat to all of that is that it has to come from it has to be authentic. Like your God-given talents. I think part of the reason why I've experienced the success I have is that I've got those talents that you had mentioned, and then you layer into it genuine empathy. Like I genuinely care, like very sincerely to my core, really, really care about the people I'm having a conversation with, the clients that I'm working with, or whatever it might be. And I think that, if folks can figure out that, and I think that, and this is speculative, I don't necessarily know, but that idea of self-reflection, like you mentioned, I think that a lot of people are reluctant to do that because it's hard. Because in order to figure out your strengths, you also have to figure out your weaknesses.
You find out you're pretty ugly.
Yeah.
know,
like I've learned and especially through business ownership, I've learned so much about myself, some of which is hard to hear. Brittany is my business partner, and I are going through this EOS system right now, where I'm the visionary, she's the integrator and the operator and whatever, and we have strengths and we have weaknesses and whatever it might be. And this is why I'm so grateful for her, but she's made me do these exercises of like things I like to do, things I don't like to do, but I'm good at, things I, whatever. And then we kind of look at this chart, and it was incredibly eye-opening to be like, oh yeah, I'm really bad at a whole lot of stuff that I'm taking on as a business owner, and realizing that I shouldn't be doing that. And even tweaking some of those roles, it's why we're having a conversation right now. Like learning what I was bad at freed me up to lean into what I'm good at. Exactly. And I'm experiencing it right now at a micro level, like just within the business. But I love your perspective on forcefully looking inward, because, it can determine people's larger paths of who they want to be. And if you can figure out who you are, which is really your God-given talents. And I believe too, and I've got a strong faith background, and I believe too that we have an obligation, once we identify those strengths, we're then supposed to share them with the world. Sure. So you almost have like an obligation to realize that it's a selfish endeavor and a selfless endeavor to learn. For example, you learning your strengths and being that conduit has made a tremendous impact on me. Mm-hmm. You've shared that gift with me and other people throughout the world, which, in turn creates a fulfilling life experience for you and those around you. And I just think it's I love your perspective on that, of forcing the inward look to kind of self-analyze, because that's hard too. The strengths and the weaknesses are there.
For sure. I think, I see that it's such an inability amongst most people to have that self-reflection, to take the time, mostly because people are just surviving every day, and then it's like, where do I even find the time to look inward and think about that? So it's not easy. It's not like, hey, just, look inward, figure yourself out. What are you good at? It's kind of thing. You really have to think and ponder these things and work through them over a long period of time to get there. It's just, again, there's no quick fix. There's no quick resolution here.
Do you finish that?
No, I'm good.
Do you feel, because I know that you have a background in commercial real estate and lending and finance and that kind of world, and now, running the businesses that you are, do you feel fulfilled?
I feel like confident in the sense that, beyond my basic needs being met, the bills being paid and my family being well provided for, and me having the ability to wake up healthy and do another day, I'm not going to really get a lot happier. So I've talked to a lot of really successful people that are so driven, so type A. I'm not type A, but I've talked to so many type A's, and it's just like the next thing. It's never enough. They never have enough. They didn't get the CEO role. Someone else did. They didn't get the promotion they wanted, whatever. They didn't hit their targets, and now they're in their minds like falling short. They're a failure. And I'm kind of looking at them like, gosh, that's exhausting. You just you're never going to have enough, regardless of how far you get going and how successful you are, how much money you make. Like, you're just always going to have this never enough mentality. And that's why, and I think, and if you look at their lives, look at their back end, the house is probably not tidy. You're probably been neglecting a lot of things on the back end that are, promoting you to go out and try to seek validation elsewhere through your business maybe. And for me, like, because I'm so rooted and I feel like I've got all the validation I need in the world by just having my family nucleus together and caring for that, everything else that happens, is just kind of icing on the cake and, something we do every day. And it's an opportunity to grow, make friends, learn. You just have to be thankful. Be thankful every day you wake up and get going. And if you kind of adopt that, it's cheesy, but that attitude of gratitude, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy I'm in the room. Happy to be doing my first podcast ever with the guy I absolutely love, And so that's like, what are you complaining about? It's not that difficult. You're making it so much harder than it has to be. And, so yeah, I mean, I'm surrounded by amazing people. I should be excited. I should be happy. I don't know if I got a little off track. I forgot your original question.
No, just about fulfillment and
am I fulfilled? Okay. Yeah. So I think I'm fulfilled in the sense that I feel like I have enough. Now, everything more I go out and get is just like, again, it's just kind of icing on the cake. I'm happy and fulfilled by helping others. I've really loved being of service to other people. And I love helping your business grow. I love being your biggest cheerleader. I love helping my business partners, help their families. And, I love sharing things. Whenever I'm doing something that having this incredible experience, or maybe it's a great vacation, or, something I'm somewhere, I'm doing something, it's always more empty if I can't share it with as many people I know would love to do that. So I think, if you kind of, for me at least, having that mentality has helped me feel fulfilled. Now, I'm nowhere near where I'd like to be, where I want to be, but I'm also not putting a timetable on when I have to get there. And there is no getting there at the end of the day. It's like, you're always going to be striving and working towards something.
There, yeah.
But what is that? Yeah, I don't even know. But I'm not a finished product. I know that we still have a lot of work to do. But I'm just grateful and thankful for the opportunity to wake up today and be able to work at it today. And I might not go forward today, but I'm not going to let that derail me. It's like, okay, we'll just try again tomorrow. And I don't know. There's just great, I feel light. I feel light in that sense that, whatever comes, and we're going to learn from it. We're going to grow from it. God's not going to give me more than I can't handle. I truly believe that. I really believe that, when we go through these seasons of wilderness in our life, and these trials, these tribulations, whatever they are, however they look, whether it's panic, anxiety, whether it's, struggles with your business, whether it's struggles in your relationships, or struggles in not feeling fulfilled in what you're doing. Like, a great friend of mine, I love this saying. He always says to me, and it's always resonated with me. A great friend of mine, Jason Pulzer, used to tell me, every time like Jason does, son, every time you're knocking on that door and it's slamming shut in your face, that's just God's way of telling you that it ain't ready to open. And there's a reason why it's not opening for you. You better turn around and look at what that is. So, I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. There's a reason why what I want to happen is not happening right now. And if you can have that sober mentality of, I know exactly why I'm not where I need to be. I'm very self-deprecating. I have a dry, sarcastic sense of humor in a lot of ways. And I know why I'm not in the shape I want to be in. I know why I'm not, there. But if you can acknowledge it and you know what that is, it's very easy to see what the path is that you need to take to get there. And I think we all just need a little more of that sober mentality of like, hey, we're honest with ourselves. We're honest with what we're good at, what we're not. We're honest with where we are and where we want to be, and with whether we're doing the things that we need to do to get there, or whether we're not, and I can be honest with myself and say, hey, I gave it about 20% today instead of 100%. And that's okay. I'm not going to let that derail me. I'm just going to give it a better go tomorrow, because now I feel like I owe yesterday something. So, it's I think that mentality works for me. That thought process works for me. And, it's still a work in progress, man. Like we still don't have it completely figured out, but we're trying, and we're gonna give it hell tomorrow.
Allegedly. I'm just kidding. No, I love the perspective, Spencer, and I want to thank you for sharing it with me. And I want you to know, I love that idea of this balance that you have of gratitude and fulfillment and satisfaction while maintaining ambition and drive and this path forward. And it's just great. And I want you to know what a profound impact you've made on my life and you continue to make on my life. You very sincerely inspire me. And I hope you know that you're making impacts to people across the board. And I've seen it, and you need to keep doing what you're doing, because what you're doing matters, and you're making impacts way beyond the businesses that you're running. And it's just so special. So I got you an Inspire by Example shirt, because you inspire me by example, the way that you live. And I just hope you know what you mean to me, and how much I appreciate you living the life that you're living, knowing that you're still a work in progress and owning that. But man, you've come so far, and I'm so glad to know you. So thank you so much for coming on and for sharing a little bit of your story.
Dude, it's my pleasure. Thank you. And I could say the same to you. You inspire me as well. And I feel like I've got a buddy in my foxhole with me every day. We do battle. We go to work. We try to strive for what we're striving for. I feel like I can count on you, and that you're in my corner 100%, and we're going to figure it out, whatever needs to be figured out. And it's fun when you can find people like that and go to battle with people like that. And I'm also just inspired to lose the weight to fit into the shirt that you've given me now. So if we do this podcast same time next year,
you'll be wearing the shirt
on your next trip down, when we're doing our fresh round of shoots for all the happy customers that we have. I'll be wearing this shirt in the podcast, and we'll be fitting into it better.
I can't wait.
But no, man, it's a pleasure. And, just hearing that means a lot to me. As men, we don't get a lot of validation. We don't get a lot of, credit or pats on the back or, that sort of thing. We just kind of do what we need to do, what's expected of us every day. And, but to hear, a brother tell you thank you and acknowledge you and what you're doing means a lot to me. It gives me more validation to keep going, and keep doing what I'm doing. And I think, like I said, one of my God-given abilities is just being a conduit of connecting good people with good people. And, I think I'm going to do that till the day I die. And I love connecting people to you, and I love helping to connect other people to the right people. And nothing brings me more joy, I think. And those things don't have to help me or benefit me directly. I get so much more joy from just seeing people, happy and fulfilled, and those connections working out. So, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to be here and be talking to you. And, it's been great. It's been awesome.
I'm so glad to know you.
All right, buddy.
Thanks, man.